Okay, well, good evening and welcome. This is Simone de Haas, the Speakers Director. I'm delighted to be hanging out with you all tonight. And I've got some of you live, and I know some of you are going to be listening to me in the future. So tonight I'm going to just cover some of the key elements, I suppose, of speaking, but helping people address things like confidence, building confidence, getting over nerves, how you can use speaking confidence to ace it in an interview. And I've got a couple of other questions from people around how to work with the tone of voice, among other things, and also how to address the physical symptoms of nerves in the body, things like palpitations or handshaking or knees knocking, all of which I have suffered from as well. So thank you very much for joining me. Now, Bronwyn, I think you had a question. So did you want to have a chat about what you wanted to know?
Oh, here I am on a speaking call, and I've got a mouthful of food. I can hardly speak. That's rather funny.
Oh, look, it is that time of night, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't realise it was that late. Yes, absolutely. I have absolutely no problem speaking to one-on-one. Once it gets, I'm okay in a group. If I have to, or I'm in a situation where, even in an access class, to get up on the microphone, like, I actually feel fine. I go there once the microphone's there in front of me and it's all quiet, and so therefore all the attention's on me. My voice just goes, and I just get the shakes. It is absolute. I know what I want to say. I know what I want to ask, but yes, everything takes over.
Yeah. So I have a little technique that I use for this, and it's called shifting the spotlight. So let me explain what that looks like. I want you to imagine yourself in exactly that situation where you're standing in front of a group, the microphone's just been handed to you, and you're about to open your mouth. So just get yourself into that space for a moment.
Okay.
Remind yourself of how that feels, and that almost induced panic that might set up for you. Now I want you to visualize that sitting right next to you, like right at your shoulder, left or right, it doesn't really matter. I'm just using my right hand here to demonstrate. So right here, right next to you, imagine there's this huge spotlight, like the old-fashioned kind that they use in the old films and you see in the black and white movies. It's gigantic and it's shining full on your face. That's what that feeling is about. It's about, you just said it yourself, about that incredible amount of attention that is suddenly focused on you. And of course, as a result of that, you're suddenly feeling, whether it's judgment, whether it's curiosity, whether it's people are actually interested in hearing what you've got to say. Whatever that might be, there is still an incredible amount of attention on you. What I encourage people to do is to get that spotlight. Just imagine you've got asbestos hands and it's not going to burn you. And I want you to very gently turn that spotlight around so that instead it is shining full bore at the audience.
Cool. Okay.
Now, when you do that, did you notice a shift in the energy when I said, just turn that spotlight around and shine it on the audience instead? So now, instead of the light being full in your eyes, you've actually put the spotlight on the audience. Because the biggest challenge for us when we are speaking is that we think it's all about us. And that's why we get the nerves. And I'm here to tell you it's not. It's actually about your audience. So when we're in that space of, oh my God, what am I going to say? My voice is quavering, my knees are knocking, my heart's, gone into palpitations, and the butterflies are just having a riot in my stomach. That's all about you and what I call ego state. But when you shift that spotlight and you say, you know what, it's actually not about me. It's about what I share, even if it's a question. It is still about what will the audience learn from your asking of that question. When you turn the
Yep.
spotlight full bore onto the audience instead, what it does, it lights up the audience. And when you light up the audience, you're able to see what is needed. When the light
Yep.
is on you and it's blinding you, you can't see a thing. You can't see what the audience need. You can't even connect with them because most of the time you can't even see if they're out there. If you've ever had the glare
Yeah.
of headlights, you know, when people are driving towards you at night and somebody's forgotten to put their high beam on, that's what that looks like when you have the spotlight on you. You can't see anything and you're momentarily blinded. So you are momentarily not present. But if you
Yep.
turn
Yeah.
those lights, you blink, you look away, you turn those lights back onto your audience, what it does, it shows you your audience and what they need from
Yeah.
you. You can then tap into the energy of the audience and go, oh, look, they're leaning forward. You can check their body language. You can see how much attention are they paying. Are they nodding? Are they leaning towards you? Is their body language, their non-verbals, telling you that they are interested in what you've got to say. And it takes all of the focus off you and your ego and instead puts it where it needs to belong, which is on your audience, so that you can
I
best
love it.
serve them.
Yeah.
So
It definitely feels good.
yeah, and it's a very simple technique. I've actually written it out as a visualization, so I will create, well, you can listen to it again on the call, but I will create it as a little short visualization that you can just play with that and then think of, okay, well, when I'm feeling like that, so when my knees are shaking or my hands are shaking or my voice is shaking, it's because I haven't got the right focus. I'm focusing on myself rather than my audience. So you want to change that focus to make it about the audience. Once you've done that, you'll find that there's a difference, that it feels different. There's a shift in the energy. You don't feel like you're being judged. It becomes actually, how can I be of service to this group of people? What do they need from me?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Does that feel different?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
It's like I was like, can I find a group of people and please just practice this?
Yes. Okay. Where are you located?
In Tasmania.
Oh, okay. All right. In Hobart or whereabouts in Tassie?
In the southwest, about an hour southwest of Hobart.
Okay.
So right on the edge of the southwest wilderness. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Well, there's nothing to stop you actually getting a few people together and having a practice and just you practicing that technique so that you can create that feeling of safety, if you like. Because even though the spotlight still kind of shines some side light onto you, you're not in the full glare of it. So it's not that you disappear and it's not that you're hidden. When you shine the light on the audience, you get the glow of that spotlight on you still, but you're not the sole purpose. They might be there to listen to what you've got to say, but your message is there to serve a purpose for your audience, and that's the most important thing, is to serve that purpose for that audience.
Yeah,
now,
thank you, Simone.
Now, there's another... Yeah?
Yeah, go on. No, go on.
Okay. There's another couple of things that you can do, even if you've done that and then you think, oh, gosh, I'm still feeling a little bit anxious. I taught this in a workshop where I was teaching today. I've done a full day of speaking coaching with a group, and I taught them this little technique, which is very simple. So even you've done the spotlight, but then there's still a little bit of residual, maybe, a little bit of anxiety. And generally what happens is when you are anxious, it means that you're in your head. Okay. And when you're in your head, you're actually absent from the audience. So you're not present anymore. So when people are not present, that's when they forget things. That's when they forget what their message is, forget what they're going to say. That's when they think, oh, well, I know I had something to say, but it's gone completely out of my head. It's because they're in their head and they're overthinking. So a way to get you back into your body and to make sure you're really present with your audience is to scrunch your toes up in your shoes So as you're there waiting to speak, you do I know, it's a really simple thing. So imagine, these are your toes. You can see me on the video. These are your toes in your shoes. And all you need to do, or barefoot, however you like to present, and then all you do is you scrunch your toes up and then relax, and then scrunch your toes up and relax. And you can do that 3 or 4 times. What that does, it immediately draws the mind, if you like, down into the body. So instead of being in your head, you are now connected back into your body. It's a very, very simple physical technique to help you anchor yourself back into your body. So that will then also help reduce those symptoms of, fluttering, or the heart going all over the place, or the voice quavering, because now you're in control of your body. Because when you're in your mind, you're not in control of your body. You're out of your mind. So you're literally no longer present. So you need to be in your body. You need to be present physically in your body. So anything that you do that gets in touch with your physical senses, your sense of touch, taste, smell, hearing, sight, any of those will help you get back in connecting with your physical presence on that stage. Doing the scrunching of the toes in shoes is really, really easy, because people can't see generally, if you've got clothes in shoes or whatever, even if you haven't, people don't generally focus on your feet. And if they are, then you've got probably more serious problems about speaking. All right. So if you do that, it's a really simple way of connecting in with your body physically and being physically present with your audience. And the final piece that will help you is breathing. When people feel a little bit anxious, and I'll talk about that in a moment in terms of a reframe, but when people are feeling those butterflies or whatever, then generally speaking, the breathing is quite shallow. So it's in the, it tends to be in the throat and in the upper chest. Whereas what you really need to do to relax completely is to do some deep breathing. So deep breathing is like yoga breathing, taking in a breath, a slow breath, and using your diaphragm and your belly muscles to actually take that breath in, rather than shallow breathing and kind of getting that constriction in the throat and the neck and the spine. Because when the spine and the shoulders are rigid or feeling a bit tense, it tightens up the jaw. And when your jaw is tight, you can't breathe and speak more, you can't speak freely, because there's just too much tension going on here and down the spine. Whereas if you relax the stomach, breathe through using your diaphragm, nice slow breath in and a slow breath out, do that 3 or 4 times, that helps calm you down, because our breath is essentially nature's tranquilizer. It's the simplest way to calm yourself down, through doing some deep breathing. So that's another technique that you can use.
Right.
So deep breathing, scrunching your toes, and turning this and shifting the spotlight. So that's 3 different techniques. And then to add to kind of that, I just want to talk about how you could reframe whether you're feeling nervous or not, because our body doesn't differentiate between the adrenaline produced by what we call nerves and the adrenaline produced by what we call excitement. It's exactly the same adrenaline. You can just instead reframe what's going on in your body. So if you're feeling an increase in adrenaline, you're going, oh wow, I'm feeling a bit G'd up at the moment, you can just have a little mantra to yourself that goes something like, I am excited to be speaking. So you acknowledge it, but you use the word excited rather, I'm a bit nervous.
Yep.
Straight away, there's a different energy on that. It shifts the focus about internal. Again, it shifts it from ego state to being of service to the audience, because you're excited to share your message. So you can use any one of those in combination, but I find that the scrunching toes and some deep breathing are great ones for that moment where it's an impromptu thing. You just suddenly have to get up and you're going, panic. You go, okay, just take a deep, calming breath, scrunch your toes, focus your presence in your body, and then speak. And that will take literally seconds. It doesn't have to take long.
that's interesting when you said that. It's quite the opposite. It's that if I was put on the spot, then I don't. It's like I don't have time to think about it. I just like, oh, okay, and the nerves and everything don't get a chance. It's that knowing. It's that time knowing that I'm going to say something and waiting for that time, your time to arrive, and that's where it's like, oh, you know, I'll space out, I guess, to a degree. Yeah. And then it becomes like a surprise. Oh, it's my turn. Or, now it's, I'm going to say something.
So the thing to do in that moment is actually you need to disassociate yourself with that overthinking and just be present. Yeah. So whoever's speaking prior to you, be present with what they're saying. Rather than being in your own head and waiting your turn, that's not very good listening skills. So you want to build your listening skills so that when your moment comes, you go, oh, okay, it's arrived already. I'm happy. I'm excited to be speaking. I step up and I speak. Whereas if you spend like the previous 15 minutes worrying about what you're doing, not only do you miss everything that the other person is saying, you're not supporting that speaker. So by being present for them, you are then also present for yourself.
Right.
And, you know, for people listening to this call a little more in the future, it's the same if you are sitting around a table for a team meeting. It's that same thing. If you're present and you pay respect to the person who is speaking by being fully present with them and in the moment with them, you'll find that any kind of anxiety or nerves about your, you know, you speak next, it just doesn't happen because you're present. And when you're present, you don't you just don't tap into that anxiety unless you're tapping into someone else's, in which case you can return it to sender. But, you know, and that does happen when you're working with a lot of people maybe who are all thinking, oh, I don't really talk about this or whatever. You might be picking up on other people as well, of course. But if it is genuinely your own, and you can tell because you'll be having some of those physical symptoms, just tapping into your body and going, okay, body, I'm really excited about this. Let's use this adrenaline to like really step up and to really be of service to this audience. And that goes for actively listening to the previous speakers as well.
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting you saying that because I'm sort of going over different scenarios, I guess, you know, and the differences. Like if I wasn't aware that I was going to be asked to speak and somebody said no, you're sort of picked out of a group or something and you're asked to speak about something, then it will be a surprise, but I'm okay to be able to get up and do it. It's and like say what at the most recent one that just comes to mind was my dad's funeral. Because I'd been asked to write something and speak, and I wanted to too. And I was very present with the people that were speaking beforehand. And it was, I totally shut down when I got up there. I felt, you know, then I was asked, wasn't sure when I was going to be asked, and then I was asked, and oh, okay, and I was fine once I got up there. I think that's why turning that spotlight maybe, or maybe I was picking up other people's stuff, but oh, wow, everything that I thought I was going to say, I didn't. I just, everyone said it was fine, but I felt like I really wasn't there, and the things that I wanted to say just didn't come out. So
and rightly so, as you said, you know, you weren't there because what often happens is that when people are speaking and then, you know, they're feeling a little anxious about having to do it, they are so much in their head that they, you know, like they're not even connecting with the audience. They're not making eye contact and they're not looking at the audience. They're not being present with the audience because they're so busy thinking, you know, what am I going to say next? Whereas if they took a moment and just paused, did a deep breathing, they would then be able to scrunch your toes. They'd be able to connect that into their body. And when you do that, you calm yourself down. You go, okay, all right, what is it I really want to say? And you just put that question out there. So, I'll often do that. And then if I'm doing a presentation or whether it's a workshop or whatever, and somebody asks me a question and I'm thinking, I'm actually not quite sure what the answer for that is. But rather than going, oh my God, I have no idea what the answer is, what's going to be, trying to look anywhere for inspiration, what I do is I actually, excuse me, I take a moment and I breathe. And as I'm breathing, and literally this is only going to take a second, I actually ask, what does this person need to hear?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And because of my years of experience in this, the right thing will come through. Now, sometimes it happened today, the general manager actually asked me a question, but the question she asked me was essentially what I had been talking about for the last 5 hours. So it was a very broad question, and so I couldn't answer it simply. But she was talking about, how to be... but there was something under it. And so I just kept on asking because I was thinking, no, there's something under this and I don't really understand what the question is that she's asking me because it's so broad and I've just talked about all of this for the last 5 hours. So what is it that she's really asking? And so I talked a little bit about the most obvious answer to her question. And then I just asked her another question and said, so what else do you need me to say? Like, what else would you like to know?
Yeah.
And you don't always have to say that out loud. You can actually just ask it energetically. So in this case, I actually asked it out loud because she's a general manager and it was all of her team who were in the workshop. So I actually said to her, so what else would you like to know about this? Because, I have covered all of this in the workshop today. So what else is missing? Because there must have been something missing for her to have asked the question. So when that happens, instead of going to a place of being, oh my God, I've done a bad job because she's asking me something that I've just, what it was a poor question. It wasn't a question that was framed particularly well. And I knew that there was something else going on underneath. So I just kept asking till I got some clarity and then I could answer what the need was. But if I had turned that spotlight back onto me and made me the focus and gone, oh my God, I've done a bad job because she's actually asking me something that I've already spoken about for 5 hours. I don't get it. Like, what the hell did I do wrong? I could have gone through all of that, but I didn't. I just went, okay, well, there's another little piece of the puzzle that she needs. What is that? And so I just asked her another question. She gave me a little bit more information. And then I went off on another 10 minutes. Actually talking about what it was that she needed to know.
Yeah.
And,
right.
And then that helped address what she needed. So I just kept that spotlight focused on her. I didn't at any point make it about me. I just kept that spotlight focused on her. And when, as you say, when it's impromptu and you're not expecting it, it's actually much easier to do that because it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I'd like to say something. But when the stakes are high, we tend to shift that spotlight back to us. Because the stakes are high for us, we think that they must be the same for everybody and that everybody's feeling that level of anxiety or wanting to do the right thing. So that's where it's most important to make sure that spotlight stays focused on the audience and say, what would they most like to hear or what do they most need to hear right now?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So, if you're asked to do a eulogy or something like that, you can tap into the energy of that and say, well, what would be of most service in this situation? What are the kinds of things that this particular audience really would like to hear? And so you can tap into the energy of that audience and then speak to that energy. It's the same as what Lisa talks about, writing to the energy of the audience. Speaking is the same. You speak to the energy of that particular audience. Does that help?
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I'm much better at writing to the audience because then I can, edit it sometimes.
So when you're speaking, you edit it through your pauses.
Sorry?
When you're speaking, Okay. So when you are speaking, you just mentioned that, when you're writing, it's easy because you can edit as you go, or, after you've written it, and you're going to polish it and make it perfect. When you are speaking, you edit through the pauses you take.
Okay, right.
I just got massive prickles on my scalp when I said that. So this is really, I've never used those particular words in exactly that a framework before. So to edit when you are speaking, you use pause. And you'll notice that after I said that statement, I actually had quite a long pause before I spoke again. That gives time for whatever you've just said to land. It allows your audience to hear what you've just said and to process it. That's how you edit when you speak.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
So when you have a lot of information that you want to share, you have to make sure that you put pauses in to ensure that the audience can keep up with you. Because we listen faster than you can speak.
Yes. Yeah. And practicing that, exercising that muscle.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
For me, pause.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like everything's going so fast sometimes, and it's like, okay. So that was a really good one for me. Thank you, Simone.
Yeah. So the interesting thing too about pausing, and I'm not talking about words like and ah. I did a little meme once, and it's somewhere on Facebook on my speaker director page, which is there are 18 different kinds of pauses. And are not two of them.
What?
Exactly. Neither is the word like or the word actually. I have a tendency to use the word so at the beginning of lots of my sentences, and I only notice it when I transcribe and think, oh gosh, I'm doing that an awful lot at the moment. So I've just done it again. When you think you're about to say an or an ah, stop speaking for half a second and just breathe in and then continue.
Right.
So it takes literally a half a second, like a short in-breath. If you feel like it's coming up, take a second, breathe in, and then continue speaking. People won't even notice that you are doing that, and the flow will be a lot better. So you won't be adding in all of those filler words as well. So that's a really useful way to get flow happening with pausing and just breathing. And so it gives it a nice sense of flow, continuity, without feeling rushed as well.
And would practicing, I mean, it just jumped into me then to practice, because I live on my own. I've a few people, and I have this awareness that I will be speaking at some point, or have will be called to. So it would be to practice out loud with the trees, with the plants, because I live in the forest.
Definitely.
And practice that, and being willing to acknowledge when, like you said, when the so comes up, or the or ah. Yeah. I just got that would be probably a very good thing.
Practice of any kind is excellent.
That I become more aware.
Well, it will help you become more aware, but also people don't practice out loud. They might have a speech that they say, oh, this is what I'm going to say at the next network meeting that I'm going to, and I've got a little 3-minute introduction about me and my business. Maybe you have an opportunity to share a bit about your business. So they prepare it, they write it all out, and they read it, but they don't practice saying it. Or if they do, they practice it once or twice and they think, oh, that'll do. You have to practice it to the point that it feels so natural for you to say that there's no question that it's in your voice, it's in your body. When actors work on a script, the amount of time they spend on learning those lines, it is what we call, we get it into the body, the same as singers. We have to get the language into the body, because that allows them to come out again in a way that it uses our body, it uses our voice to be said in a way that is congruent for the character. You know, we build all the other stuff on top of that. But when we, it's like any kind of muscle. You have to practice it. You have to work with it and exercise it.
Yeah.
So speaking is the same. If you are uncomfortable with speaking, then you should speak out loud, not just in your head and reading it to yourself. Speak out loud. I encourage people to record themselves on their phone, play it back and notice what are they doing, what filler words are they using. Do they tend to say a lot of words like, or actually, or literally? You know, we pepper our speech with that filler.
Yes.
When we don't know what it is we want to say. It's another way of taking a breath. We just fill it up with some sound and we use it like and so. Instead, we could just take a moment, take a little sneaky breath and continue with the dialogue. I would encourage you to practice, definitely.
Yes. I funnily enough, I have actually been doing that, and not necessarily, you know, in preparation for anything. Just, you know, I will talk out loud things that pop into my head, some awarenesses that I get. I'll talk out loud to the trees or to the animals, whatever. However, one of the things that when you just said, that just sent a ooh through me, recording your own voice, because I think most people don't like it. I mean, I hear that from a lot of people. They hate the sound of their own voice. And when I have done it a couple of times, and I just, oh no, I don't want to listen to this.
Okay.
I do not like my own voice. So, okay, what sort of things can I... what can I do to actually have more ease with that? Maybe just ask some questions.
Okay. Now, did you notice a difference in your voice when you said, what can I do to have more ease with that? And when you were talking about the fact that you don't like your voice, if you listen back to the recording, you will notice that your voice shifted by a couple of tones.
Right. Okay.
When you have judgment on your voice, when you say, oh, I don't like my voice, it starts to sound a little bit like this. It's what I call metallic. So there's a bit of an edge to it. And whenever we have a judgment about our voice, that judgment actually, it's like a tuning fork. It almost tunes our voice up a little and it becomes a little more shrill. It becomes a little more metallic because they're going, oh, I don't really like how I sound. And the minute we say that, you can hear it in the voice. You can hear that level of extra interference. It's no longer our authentic voice. The minute you ask the question, what could I do? Your voice just went, oh, and relaxed, and it dropped into where it naturally sits. Now, your voice is naturally a little lower than you think it is. And one of the ways you can work out where your voice naturally resides, your speaking voice, is to say the word aha a couple of times over and over, and you'll begin to notice that, oh, aha, aha, aha. That's that's pretty much the mid-range of your voice.
Aha.
Not with the question, without any intonation, just say, without any expression, you just say, aha.
Aha. Aha. Aha.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that's the mid-range of your voice, that sound.
Right.
Now, we all have more like higher tones and we have lower tones. If you find that your voice, when you listen back to it and you think, oh, it's sounding a little bit metallic, then you want to add a little bit more resonance to it. And you can do that by singing songs in the shower. It's a great way to build in a bit of resonance. Okay, so resonance, it's too complicated to go into without doing like a full instruction video, but resonance, like we have lots of resonators in our head and in our chest, and it is what actually creates the rounded tone. Because I've been on the stage for a long time and have practiced with, you know, my not only my energy, but my vocal dynamics and my pitch and the pace that I use, my voice is naturally a little bit lower now than it used to be. And that's because I practice a lot at that rate. So my voice sounds, it's very calm. You know, people, it's engaging. I can ramp it up. I can make it a lot faster. I can certainly bring it up in pitch a little bit. But generally speaking, if I'm doing a presentation, it'll be at around about this level. But I use my voice. I have a lot of light and shade in my voice. And that's the one thing that people can practice quite easily by reading out loud.
Right.
If you have a piece of text, it can be anything. Just grab, you know, the nearest book on your desk, grab the nearest book and start to read some passages out loud. Try reading it in a slightly higher voice and then try reading it with a lower voice, just dropping the tone just a fraction. And that will help you start to build a little bit more resonance because, you know, when you just said, so that's quite low, which is good. There's a bit of resonance, a bit of chest resonance in that. And that's great. When you're sounding anxious, it's going to be a little bit higher, and that becomes a little unpleasant to listen to because it sounds forced. So judgment, every judgment we have about our voice and the message we're sharing shows up in the voice.
And that's so resonates so much with me too, Simone. I have been told to be quiet all my life. I used to sing a lot and I loved it. Was always told to be quiet, you know, even as a kid, singing Happy in the Shower. And I have had a lot of judgment placed on my voice. So it does, that's probably where a lot of the anxiety comes from.
Indeed. So now you need to sing to the trees as well as speak to the trees. You need to sing to the trees, they told me.
Thank you.
If you start to practice using your voice in ways that maybe you shut down, you will start to develop more resonance, a more rounded tone, and you will drop into your authentic voice, both metaphorically and physically. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic. Now, I just want to talk about vocal tones a little bit more. I've covered some of that. One of the other people who asked a question that I was going to address follows on really neatly from your question about voice and what you can do with it. So Catherine asked about vocal tones that engage the audience and make it light for them to listen to. So Catherine, one of the things that you can do is what I've just talked about with Bronwyn, which is making sure that there's warmth and resonance in your voice. What is not pleasant for an audience is a tone that is too metallic or too shrill. So you want to, if you're noticing that about your voice, and a really simple way to work out what's going on with your voice is to record yourself saying something that you talk about all the time. It can be, you can read something from a book or just record yourself talking about your business, whatever it might be, something that you enjoy, and then listen back to it. Even through the tinny speakers on a phone, you will still get a fairly good idea of, is there resonance in the tone? If there's not, if it's sounding a little flat or monotone, you want to work on developing a little bit more modulation. And modulation comes from the pitch, which is what I was talking about before with Bronwyn, which is where your natural voice resides. If the pitch is too high, it's a little harder to listen to. A lot of young women have very high-pitched voices. It's almost impossible to distinguish that and to cut through any kind of noise in a room if your voice is too high-pitched. So you want to add a little bit of chest resonance to create a fuller sounding voice. The pace at which you speak is also something that can either draw people to you or push them away. And the pace is, if it's too fast and people are struggling to understand you, that's going to push people away. It's going to make it a little bit challenging for them to really get on the same page as you, to really kind of tap into your message. So if I were to speak really, really fast, and if I was going to do a presentation, I'm so excited to be sharing this with you, and you'll notice that my voice has got really, really high, and it's like really becomes a bit unpleasant. You don't want to do that to an audience. You want to keep the voice well modulated. So your pace needs to be a fairly even pace, not too slow, not too fast. You know, it's kind of like Goldilocks, neither too warm or too hot, too cold. You want to have a nice mix of different vocal modulation in there. So that means picking up the pace when it's important for your message, and then slowing it down when you really want your audience to pay attention. And then you pause, give them time to catch up. So you can quicken your pace, get them really excited, and then say, now, I really want you to pay attention to what I'm going to say next. Everybody's ears prick up, they wait patiently or excitedly or whatever it is. Give them a moment and then tell them, but slow your pace down a little. That invites them in rather than pushing them away. So the pitch, the pace, pause, and the final one is volume. Over and over and over. In meetings, I have to ask people to speak up. Part of that is because I have a little bit of hearing loss in one ear, and there are certain pitches of voice that I really struggle to hear. Generally, young women have a pitch that makes it really difficult, as I said, to cut through any other noise. So it's hard for me to sometimes hear that. And if someone is very softly spoken, that can be a real challenge for them to be able to be heard in a meeting. They'll be talked over, they'll be shut down. So if you generally speak with not a lot of power, or what I like to think of as potency in your voice, then you need to start to develop that. You need to use a bit more of your diaphragm and your breathing to support the voice so that you've got more power, more resonance, and more potency, so that your voice reaches your audience better. So if people at the back of the room are saying, speak up, I can't hear you, that's not only on a physical level, that is energetically they can't hear you as well. So really pay attention to the amount of volume you are using, so the amount of power you are using when you are speaking. If people are asking you to speak up, that's also showing you that you need to be more visible, more present, and more vocally connected to your voice. So that's an important one as well. The 4 Ps are the hallmarks of modulation for the voice: pitch, pace, pausing, and power or potency. So that if you can work with those and practice different ways of doing that, then you can have a bit of fun with creating a much more dynamic vocal energy that people really find engaging to listen to. I'm having a look to see what other questions. Did that bring up any questions for you, Bronwyn?
There we go. I had myself on mute.
That's great. Thank you for that. Did that bring up any questions when I said that?
Mine was actually, I am too loud.
Yes. Okay. So what you want to do is add a little bit of warmth to your tone. Dropping your pitch, because your voice, as I said earlier, you've got a little bit of edge there, and that could be because of the judgments you make about your voice. So you need to also judge the room size and pull back a little vocally so that you're not bombarding your audience. Because what happens is when your voice is when you overproduce the volume, it pushes against your audience. And so they're going to be leaning away from you because they'll find that your voice is too loud. So if you're getting feedback from people that it's too loud, you might want to ask yourself, why am I pushing my message at my audience?
Okay.
What would it take to invite them in instead?
Yeah.
Because really that's what it's about. When we're overly loud, we are actually in what I call the 3rd circle of presence. The 1st circle is where the people are who are very shy and they're introverted and they're very quiet, and you don't really hear them very much, and it's really hard for them to actually express themselves, and it's all very internalized and impossible to hear or to understand. So they're very withdrawn. So they're in that 1st circle of presence where it's closed. They're not sharing very much of themselves. In the 3rd circle, we're sharing almost too much of ourselves in an effort to get people to like us. What you want to do is have a beautiful balance between those and be in the second circle of presence, which is where we are present with our audience, with our bodies, with our voice, with our message. So you want to be in that second circle where you are always connected with everything that you want to say, but also with your voice, where you don't need to push the message at the audience. You invite them to come in and join you in that second circle of presence.
Right. Thank you, Simone.
And then the final question was from Cass Russell, who asked about what do I do to be a good interviewee, because she had an interview recently, and although they loved her experience and it was actually a position that she could easily have walked into, she didn't do as well in the interview as she really would have liked. And so her question was, what can I do to create a better impression? So, Cass, my first question to you would be, in which circle of presence were you when you did that interview? Were you in the first circle or were you in the third circle? And intuitively, I'm kind of guessing that maybe you were certainly not in that second circle, that maybe you were in the first and you were a little more reticent than you needed to be. One of the ways to engage with people in an interview is through story. And when people ask you an interview question, one of the quickest ways to respond in a way that builds rapport and builds trust and builds credibility in your skill set is to share a story. And a simple way to share a story, we all know what a story looks like. Hopefully we've had stories either read to us or we go to the movies and we see a story unfold on the screen. And a story is made up of very simple components. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. But when you're sharing a story, and particularly if you're sharing a story around experiences or something that you've done in a work or career situation, you want to flesh that out a little bit. You want to give them you can use a bit more of a structure. So think about, there's any story you love to read. It's got a plot. It has characters. There's conflict. There is a protagonist and an antagonist. You want to create a story that has all of those elements, but you want to do it in a way that is fairly succinct and concise with not too much waffle. So you can say, this is the situation I found myself in. So you are the hero of that particular story. I found myself in this situation. This was the challenge. But not only did I have this challenge, I had this conflict with this other person who had a competing set of ideas of what they wanted to do. So maybe you're telling a story about teamwork, and this is where you had one ideal, the other person had a different ideal, and as a result, we had some conflict. That's how all of the stories, every story we go, every book we read, every movie we watch, every teleseries we watch on TV, everything that we are connected to in the world of storytelling has this kind of structure where we have two people who have competing set of priorities. And the conflict that creates and the way you resolve that conflict, that's a great story to tell in an interview. It engages the person who's interviewing you, and it helps them to see what you're capable of without having to go into, without going into like the data. Because the data is your resume. They can see that already, and what they want to know is, will you fit? Do your values fit? So telling a story is one way that you can share more about yourself, about your values, about what is a big driver or a big motivator for you. If I can demonstrate this now for you by telling you one of my own stories. So many years ago, I went for a new job. I was working in theatre for quite a long time as a professional actor, then realised that I wasn't making a huge amount of money. We don't always make lots of money as an actor. So I needed to go back to full-time work. So I went to an agency, and the agency put me forward for a role, at a really high-level role, as the executive assistant PA to the managing director of a really well-known beverage company here in Queensland. Now, we were told that as part of the interview process, we had to do a 15-minute presentation on ourselves so that they could get a sense of who we were, what we liked, what our hobbies were, how would we fit in with that organisation. Part of the brief to the recruitment company was we're looking for someone who's a little bit out of the box, who's creative. Now, you might automatically, if you know me, you might think, oh, well, Simone would have been a shoo-in. But at that time, I wasn't anywhere near as visible as I am these days. Okay, so for me, it was as challenging as anybody else who got that particular brief. You've got to do a 15-minute presentation about yourself. And I hummed and hawed and I created a PowerPoint presentation and I thought, oh, that's so boring because that's what everybody else is going to do. If I was really out of the box, if I wanted to stand out, I have to tell the story of me in a way that only I can tell it. And I thought, you know what? One of the things that makes me who I am is my theatricality. It is the fact that I'm quirky and I have an odd sense of humour and that comes out. And it is the fact that, okay, I might be really good at this job, but so is everybody else. But what they didn't have was my creativity. What they didn't have was my years of experience in the theatre. So I prepared my presentation of 15 minutes, but I presented it in a way that was uniquely me. I got to the interview. I had a tape recorder because that was that long ago. I had a tape recorder. I had music, which was the MGM fanfare. You know the one? So all that, yeah. Great fun. So that was playing in the background and I had my PowerPoint time to go with that. And then I sang. I sang an entire song about how I would be the perfect secretary for this managing director. When I sang, every person in that, and it was a panel, every person around that table, their jaw dropped. They were not expecting this. And after a while, they began to laugh. Not at me, but with me. And after a while, there were big grins on their faces. And I'd handed them all a piece of paper with the words of the song so they could follow along, because it was all about how I was the epitome of assistance secretarial. And I did it based on a patter song. Well, by the end of it, not quite a standing ovation, I got a huge round of applause. But what it did was made them see who I was, and I even said it to them, this is who I am, warts and all. I do odd things. I'll break into song if I feel like it. Not in front of the clients necessarily, but this theatre is a huge part of who I am. Being creative, being theatrical is a huge part of my personality. It's how I express myself through my creativity. And if they didn't like that, if they thought, oh, that's a little over the top, then I wasn't going to be the right person for them. But the fact that they said they were looking for someone out of the box, I went, you know what? I'm just going to give it a go. I'm going to express who I am in a way that only I can. And that's what we forget to do in an interview. We try to be like everybody else. We try to answer the questions in a way that we think, oh, well, this is probably what they're looking for. We try to second guess what they're looking for instead of saying, you know what, this is me. And if you don't want me, I'm actually okay with that because it means that I'm not the right fit for your job. I'm who I am, and I'm not going to apologize for that or try to diminish who I am. And that goes for any kind of speaking opportunity, whether it's a career interview or whatever it might be. Be unapologetically yourself. And because I was that, I got the job. I was who they were looking for. They wanted someone who was not afraid to be creative, because a big part of the job was, in fact, creating events for the company. And so they knew that my creative flair would, in fact, be an incredible asset. And what was really interesting was that so I was about the second person to be interviewed, and for the rest of the day, they had quite a few people they were interviewing, about 12 people, I think. And for the rest of the day, everybody who turned up at reception, because word of what I did spread throughout the company. And so throughout the rest of the day, every time somebody came up to reception and said, "Oh, I'm here for the interview," the receptionist, bless her, said, "So what are you going to do? A woman this morning sang." Which was immediately cruelled any chance that they had of doing a good interview, because they went, "Oh my God, I'm never going to do that." So in some funny kind of way, she probably sabotaged everybody else's chances. But so I've shared that story so that you understand how stories work. So I've told you a little bit about the panel. I told you a bit about the company. I told you what I actually did. What the conflict was do I be myself and risk them not liking who I am? Or do I do what everybody else? So that was my conflict. And I had to, so what I decided, so the decision I made was, in fact, to be myself, not only to be myself, but to really sell that. So if you're doing an interview, you have to sell yourself, but in a way that is congruent and authentic for you. So if you're not comfortable with selling yourself in an interview, you're not going to get the job, because an interview is a selling process, just as an audition is. When I'm working with actors, I always say to them, you need to go in and you need to see this as an opportunity to be of service to that audition panel. Because you might be just what they're looking for, but they don't know it yet. So if you're shy, if you become invisible the moment you walk out onto that stage, or the minute you walk into an interview, if you contract and become invisible, they're never going to really get the essence of you. And that's vital. You need to have the full essence of you, all of you, available, so that people go, you know what, I have no idea what she just did in that interview, but I just want her in the company. And the feedback, they still talk about that interview. As a result of that interview, I'm not kidding, no word of a lie, I ended up in the newspaper and I ended up on TV. Because people heard about it and they said, you know what, this is such a great story. We should talk about this. So I ended up having a couple of interviews, and they wrote it up and did a photo of me dancing on the boardroom table, which I didn't do. I just sang, but they had me dancing on the boardroom table, and they did a little segment on an afternoon TV show that they then played about the fact that this is how I approached my interview. The company was Forex, a very broad company. For those of you who live in Queensland, you'll understand how significant that is, a very blokey company. And here I was singing and dancing for my interview. So it's about being yourself. It's about being authentic. It's about being credible, about living your values in that, whether it's an audition or an interview or a speaking opportunity. It's about being congruent, being authentic, making sure that the language you use and the way you present yourself is congruent with who you are, is authentic. And that's the key, I think, for regardless of what kind of speaking opportunity it might be, is to ensure that you are yourself and you bring your best self to the table. So, Cass, I hope that that fairly long exposition and story has helped you a little bit with your question. And that was the last, there was one more question about gifts, how to use my voice. I wasn't quite sure what the question needed for that particular one, but I might just talk a little bit more about the ways in which you can use your voice. And so if people say that, oh, I love listening to your voice, then create something for that audience. And it could be something as simple as a short podcast. Now, I create a podcast that is 3 minutes long. Most people do podcasts of like an hour. I can't do that. I need, for me to do that, I need to be talking to someone. As you'll notice now, this has gone on for this recording now is about an hour long. And it's because I'm talking with someone and I can feed off the questions. But if I just have to talk about something just on my own, that's a little more challenging. So I will generally do a really short podcast of about 3 minutes, and it's an inspirational one. If you want to listen to it, it's called The Director's Eye. It's on iTunes. I have about 20 episodes up at the moment. I've got probably another 20 to upload, which I'll probably do over the Christmas holiday break. So there's lots there that's about inspiration. And so I do that because people like my messages. They love the fact that it's short, it's really quick to listen to, but it gives them a bit of an injection, helps them to feel inspired. And that's available on iTunes, as I said, but that's one way that you can use your voice. If people like to listen to your voice, then create something that taps into that particular audience. The other way that you can use your voice is to actually do things like voiceovers for people. My husband is a voiceover artist, and so we're just at the moment creating his account on Fiverr for him to create voiceovers for people who want to create a podcast and they need maybe an introduction to it. Or you have an advertisement and you'd love somebody to voice that. That's a different way that you can use your voice and make money from your voice. So there's a number of different ways. It really depends on who your audience is and what your objective is for using your voice. And of course, you can get out and speak. You know, that is the simplest way. Get out there and share your message. Do Facebook Live. That's a brilliant way, as Lisa's been doing with Creativity Lab and all different things, Nurture Club and Business Alchemy Lab. You know, she does a lot of Facebook Live videos, and they're a great way, if you're comfortable with doing video, they're a great way to get your message out there and speak about what's really important to you, what you're passionate about, and the message that you want to share with the world. So there's a number of different ways that you can utilize your voice and get it out there. If you're struggling to know what your message is, you can also work one-on-one with me. There's the potential to do that. I have a number of different offerings. If you'd like to know more about that, feel free to contact me at simone@thespeakersdirector.com. And we can have a chat, or Facebook message me, private message me if you wish, and we can have a chat about how we might do some work together. So some of my specialties are not just public speaking and how you can become better at that, but also helping you identify what is the story that is uniquely yours, that you and only you can share with the world. So I have a gift and a capacity with this that is where I tap into your particular story and it speaks to me. And whether the story is in the form of a book that you've written already, or it's a business idea that you have, I can tap into that and actually help you work out, how can I share this particular message? What's the best platform for me to share my message? Do I need to write a book? Is it a business model? So there's lots of different ways that I can work with you and your story if you're interested. So feel free to contact me by either email or Facebook Messenger, or find me on Facebook, Simone de Haas, the Speakers Director. Love you to go over and like my page if you feel so inclined, if the energy is there for you. Otherwise, happy to answer any other questions that you might have, and I'll just type a response to that. So I've come to the end of the questions. Just to finish off, Barbara, my apologies, there must be a Barbara listening sometime in the future. But Bronwyn, is there anything else that I've said that you now have a question around that would wrap it up for you?
No, actually, I think I'm pretty okay. Mine, the only thing was when we were talking about Facebook Live, I've actually just done a couple of those, and that was very interesting for me, and I was quite surprised. I actually was very happy with them. So yeah.
Oh, well done. Well done. It's actually, I find it's really quite fun, because there's no pressure on making it, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's where you are right there and then, oh, I've just had the awareness, look, I'd really like to talk about this little thing for just a moment. And so you talk about it, and it might be 5 minutes, it could be half an hour, whatever it is. And it's so wonderful that you get to share a bit of your personality in that process. And I think that that's one of the great things that Facebook has actually come up with is Facebook Live. And of course, now with the different algorithms and things that they're using, algorithms rather, not logarithms, algorithms they're using, if you have a live video, you're more likely to be seen. So it's a great way to become more visible to your potential audience. So well done on doing that. That's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes,
so
I was very happy with it.
Excellent. So if there's no further questions, then I'm going to say good night and good morning and goodbye to everybody listening into this in the future. Thank you very much for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for some great questions. And if you have any more, feel free to contact me and I'll see what I can do to answer them. Maybe I'll do a Facebook Live video just for you. So thank you for listening. And I look forward to connecting with you again in the future. You have a great evening. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye.
My pleasure. Bye.